Is this thing on? Oh, it's on. Oh, it's on. How many different ways and in different languages can you say an administration is flailing and circling the drain and drowning? And every time they seem to be drowning, I'm talking about the Trump administration, they find a way to have, I've never seen a drowning man ask for an anchor to be thrown at them more often than the Trump administration in everything they do. Flailing in the Iran war, talk about that. Flailing in the financial markets and the bond markets. Treasury Secretary flailing, Commerce Secretary flailing, Donald Trump flailing, attacking Canada and getting their ass kicked in 2 languages. This is what a death rattle looks like. For those that are wondering, I wonder what a failed presidency looks like and the death rattle that comes with it. You're watching it. This is what's happening. Yeah, I'm going to talk about a couple of cases that on paper, like, oh, the Supreme Court may have stepped into the mail-in ballots in the wrong direction. I'm not so sure about that. We'll talk about the ruling and what it really means and what's going to happen next. But court case after court case, economic decision after economic decision. Do they have a plan to solve the growing deficit? No. Do they have a plan to try to intervene militarily in the bond market and screw up our economy? Apparently, yes. Do they have a plan against Canada? Yeah, change the name of Lake Ontario. Do they have a plan about their losing ways in the Kennedy Center matter? Yeah, we'll tear it down and put up an amphitheater. I'm like, are you, do you know we're watching you? You know, it's like when you're watching one of those movies and somebody says something out loud and another person in the scene says, you know, we can see you, right? We can hear you. You know, we can see you, Trump administration, right? And we hear you. And we're baking this into our decision-making to the extent there's anything left to decide for the midterms, which are like in 80 days. And no amount of stepping on voting rights or trying to raise the high bar, you know, even higher, you know, right before you jump and you mail in ballot or you vote is going to stop the American people and the citizens that are voting to take down this administration and run the bastards out on a rail. That's what they did in the old-timey times. I watched Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Is that the right one with George Clooney? I always wondered when you run somebody out on a rail, what it looks like. Oh yeah, they show you in that movie. That's what's going to happen. And the flailing that's going on. You know, I'll just touch on, before we get to Canada, to kick off the intersection, and you are on the intersection. For those that wandered in from somewhere else and wondered, who is this guy? And what is he ranting about? I'm Michael Popok. You're on the Midas Touch Network. This is the intersection of law and politics. I want to talk about the Kennedy Center. I want to talk about Canada and the trade war that Donald Trump is losing, and Doug Ford making a very good faith threat to kick Donald Trump's ass and turn off the lights of America. We'll talk about that. Ghislaine Maxwell may get a pardon by Donald Trump after all, but it's going to be over a federal order of Judge Engelmeyer denying her jailhouse lawyer. She didn't have a lawyer. She did it herself. Writ of habeas corpus petition. Not only did she lose it, meaning, no, convict, go back to serving your 20-year sentence for child sex trafficking. But he said the evidence that you supplied, get this, talk about the galling nature of Ghislaine Maxwell. She used the Epstein files from the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the victim's files, so to speak, to support her as the criminal defendant, to support her case. And Judge Engelmeyer said, yeah, many times when you supplied evidence from that, it only strengthened the convictions. Good job. And then we've got updates about Epstein as well. The Epstein files, and Judge Sullivan's presiding over a case involving Katie Fang. I've got Danny Bensky, one of the leaders of the survivor movement and the Epstein survivor movement, joining us tomorrow night on the Midas Touch Legal AF podcast. Talk about some of this from her unique perspective. And then Minnesota is not relenting in its dogged pursuit of justice for those in Minnesota during Operation Metro Surge who were maimed, beaten, murdered, or worse by ICE and Homeland Security. And if the Department of Justice isn't going to investigate how Alex Pretty and Renee Good came to die, or how an innocent man during a traffic stop was shot out through a door by an ICE agent, and then is now a fugitive from justice in Texas, Minnesota's going to do it. I just interviewed, it's going up number 1 tomorrow, or number 2 tomorrow. I just interviewed, there's Mr. Christian Castro. I interviewed Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, about hearings that happened today in court in Texas to try to get this fugitive of justice back to Minnesota to stand trial for felonies and misdemeanors that he is responsible for, has been indicted for, related to the shooting through a door that almost hit a child and hit this person in the leg, and then they lied about it. And then I want to spend a considerable amount of time explaining and unpacking what appears on the surface to be a complicated issue about mail-in ballots, but isn't when you sort of scrape the veneer. And yes, there's a decision by the Supreme Court, but more importantly, there's a decision by Judge Tawani in Massachusetts, which overrides the Supreme Court. I know you, Popok, you've always told us the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the land. How does a district court judge in Massachusetts override the Supreme Court? Depends on what procedural posture you're in. Depends on which case you're dealing with. Depends who's your plaintiff. Talk about that here on the intersection. And then because we are live. Questions can be asked and answered on this show. Put it in the chat. I've got people operators are standing by, everybody, to take your questions, and I will try to answer them. There's already a few up here. Let's see. Paul Gustafson says about Governor Abbott and the obstruction of justice and not signing the extradition papers for Christian Castro, the ICE agent who lied under oath, who shot a person and then lied about it, about him standing justice in Minnesota and the obstruction that's going on. We're going to get a ruling on that. Hold your thought there, Paul, until I get there. Do you think SCOTUS handed Trump? Do you think SCOTUS handed Trump a win? I guess that was supposed to be from Susie Ann Jones on mail-in ballots. No, and I'll explain about that. And how do you feel about midterms? Good. I feel very good. Are we going to get, if the Democrats, the non-Trumpers, don't get 20 to 30 seats, maybe even as high as 40 seats in the House, and they only need 3 to take control, I'd be shocked. I'd literally be shocked. All 435 seats are up for grabs in the House. Senate, we got to flip 4. Democrats got to flip 4. Looking better. Looking better when 75% of the country has rejected Donald Trump in polling, when 47 out of 50 states he's underwater, mainly by double digits, favorable versus unfavorable. Even if you include voters who voted the last time, it's still almost 40 states out of 50. You can't win. You can't win so far under. And at the midterms, what the important poll to look at is the polling around the nameless Democrat versus the nameless Republican, where the nameless Democrat is automatically up 8 to 10 points. So the flip in the Senate, going to be hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Going to be hard. I don't know if Susan Collins gets tossed finally from Maine. She might. Alaska, I think we got a good shot in Alaska. These are the seats that got to be flipped. So overall, House shocked, literally shocked. And I'll come on and tell you I was shocked. Shocked if it doesn't go completely blue. Senate, it's going to be a close call. It's going to be white knuckle all night. Put on a pot of bourbon, coffee, whatever floats your boat. And we'll be covering here in Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network for sure. Let me dive into the Kennedy Center first, then I'll do Canada. Kennedy Center. I don't know. I don't think it's good form for the president of the United States to have his trustees say in papers if the name doesn't get changed, they're going to tear down and demolish the Kennedy Center. Like, what? And here's the ridiculous linkage. And it's all false. You know how I know it's false? I know they know it's false because I looked at their filing. And where there should be evidence in the form of a declaration under oath, an affidavit, testimony, a document, some sort of transcript, something to support outlandish bullshit that's filed in a courtroom. When you're trying to avoid a contempt finding by Judge Cooper, there's nothing. We have a concept, a term for that in my profession. It's called naked argument of counsel. When you're done giggling, it's what it sounds like. It's just completely without any evidential support. And everything that they said. Fundraising has been turbocharged by Donald Trump. People are donating only because Donald Trump's name on it. Wrong. We know that's a lie. Washington Post has a new article up. I'll do a video tomorrow on it that says fundraising has shriveled up. That's my sphincter closing. Dried up because Donald Trump's name is on the building. Nobody wants to donate. So they're going to reward Donald Trump by putting his name twice underneath and as large as in more text and font size than Kennedy himself on his own memorial. I was just thinking of something personal. That would be the equivalent. I don't want to go there. Anyway, yeah, no. And they file because Judge Cooper said, I just read Representative Beatty's motion about you passing a resolution to close the Kennedy Center without proper analysis or prudent thought in breach of the public trust as you as fiduciaries, and about renaming it again, putting Donald Trump's name in the plaza, putting his name on the front portico, put it here, put it there. Well, it's not a memorial, they say in their filings, because it's about future acts too. Future acts are past acts the next day. That's preposterous. And as soon as Chris Cooper, who issued a 96-page ruling and a preliminary injunction, a permanent injunction about the Kennedy Center, he's the guy that said, take the name down. As soon as he saw the papers from Representative Beatty against the trustees, he said, yeah, we're going to have a hearing on Thursday. In fact, programming note, Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, who works with us on Legal AF YouTube channel, is going to be in the courtroom. It's going to be a live hearing. He's going to use his press credentials. He's going to get in for us, and he's going to come out immediately because it's very hard to report from within a courtroom. They take all your electronics, even the press. And so he's got to come out. But when he comes out, there'll be this great backdrop of the federal courthouse in Washington and Adam Klasfeld, and then I'll have him on, and we will report on it in real time. But he didn't even need to see the president's papers, the government's papers. He set the hearing. And then they filed their papers today or late last night. And they literally said, the building is so derelict that we might have to just tear it down and put up an open air amphitheater, like whatever your local community theater does, with the Potomac in the background. And it's not really a good memorial for JFK, but you're making us do it. Don't make us demolish it. He loves demolishing things. We turned our back for a minute and a third of the White House was gone. Apparently, even Melania didn't know about that, considering that was her office. You think they packed up her stuff in a box with like a sad plant in it before she went away for the weekend, and then they knocked over her building? How about that? Melania's back in the news as long as we're commenting on things, It's like Beetlejuice. All you had to say was Natalie Harp's name 3 times and Melania Trump appeared. That's all you had to do. So, and I love her press conference. I'm back. I heard you missed me. Is that why you're back? Or are you back because there's allegations that your husband is playing footsie with a 35-year-old office staffer who likes to leave love notes and says that you are the air that I breathe and I can't live without you? And maybe it's time for the old wife to take her out of mothballs and bring her out and take her around the block a few times. What do you think, everybody? Oh, as there's also reporting, although I'm not doing it, about some allegations of affairs that Melania is busy having instead of being the first lady, Or as one of her closest advisors said on a podcast, she's the most consequential first lady of all time. Take a seat. Take a seat, Eleanor Roosevelt. Take a seat, Dolly Madison. Take a seat, Martha Washington. Betty Ford, Ronald Reagan's wife. I mean, you name it. Michelle Obama. Most consequential in what way? The destruction of all that we hold dear in the White House or around the White House. So she's back. And the rumor is the reason they went out so strong against Jon Ossoff, presidential candidate, Jon Ossoff, tying Trump to Natalie Harp and said some disgusting things about him, is because Melania pushed the button and wanted Ossoff torn apart because it made her look bad. And she doesn't like those kind of stories. That makes a lot of sense, don't you think? Flailing. Did I mention flailing administration at the top of this show? So what's going to happen with the tear down threat at the Kennedy Center? Back to the Kennedy Center. You've got, I know my staff's like, because I make them divide up this podcast into like segments and they try to use AI. And I'm like, you can't use AI with me. You're going to have to just follow the script wherever follow the extemporaneousness of this presentation, no matter where it leads. Back to the Kennedy Center. What do I think is going to happen on Thursday? I think the judge is going to enter a temporary stay of any attempt to either tear down the Kennedy Center or rename it in violation of his prior permanent injunction. I think he's going to set a briefing schedule on the rest. He's going to consider a contempt motion if one is brought by the Trump side. And what I learned, and you'll learn too when you watch my video tomorrow morning on Legal AF, is that, you know who was the what's the word I'm looking for? The maestro, the Svengali, who was running everything inside the meeting. Somebody who wasn't even on the board. Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary. God, everything that goes bad and wrong. Seriously, it's Howard Lutnick standing there. He's directing traffic in the board meeting, which Trump participated in. He's making all sorts of statements and comments and propounds the resolution. He's like the sponsor of the resolution on the naming. I mean, can you unscrew your head from inside of Donald Trump's rectum long enough to realize that this is not the America that anybody signed up for? That you were not elected. Well, Lutnick wasn't elected at all, but you were not elected to destroy all that we hold dear and holy in our democracy. That was not your remit. That was not your mandate. Okay, you never had a mandate. You certainly didn't have that mandate. Who? You can put it in comments. Who voted for Donald Trump because they wanted him to tear down the East Wing? Who voted for Donald Trump because they've always hated the Kennedy Center and they wanted it torn down? Who voted for Donald Trump because that you wanted him to finally put Canada and Mexico, not China and Russia, in their place, economically or otherwise? Put a note in comments if you voted for Donald Trump because you wanted him to chloroform the economy or to take away Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits, or to increase inflation, or to lower job creation. Who voted for this? If I hear one more person say, well, at least he's not a socialist. I don't even know what that means. Well, transgender men in girls' bathrooms. Really? That's one, factually inaccurate. And two, that's the driver for you? And everything else you're okay with, the complete assault on the Constitution, on the separation of powers, on our rule of law, on our way of life, on our patriotism, that's your big concern? Just mind-boggling. So Kennedy Center is going to go poorly, I believe, for Donald Trump tomorrow and the administration. Lori Cheney asked, I got the ad break. Laura Cheney asked, how is Lutnick still in the administration? It's a very good question. But any of them, like, you could have one weak link in a cabinet, and sort of survive. Like, how did that guy get in there? But when the entire cabinet is a weak link, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the cover. One-eyed man in the land of the blind. I don't know. I mean, when you have RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth and Todd Blanche, who's the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, apparently, and Lutnick and Bessent. I'll wait till I get to Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and all his bullshit. That's coming up when I get to the Canada trade war issue. So let me go through some questions here. Leave your questions and comments. It is live. I can answer them for sure. Question: can the Kennedy family sue the government? Colleen Kovac, disgracing the Kennedy Center. You got to look at the kind of the deed of trust, like how this was created. There are situations where people donate money, like, Avery Fisher's family was not happy when they renamed at Lincoln Center in New York. The Avery Fisher Hall became, which I knew as a child, became the Geffen Hall, and there was things that had to be done. But, this was a congressional organic statute creating the Kennedy Center. In his memorial, it's going to be up to the board members or other plaintiffs to police this issue. I mean, it wouldn't be bad if there was a Kennedy family member who was a plaintiff. Right now, Joyce Beatty is doing it all herself. She's not the only ex officio member, by the way. Sheldon Whitehouse is on there with her. There's like 30 members. You know what's interesting? You know who didn't vote yes and didn't vote at all on an issue related to the naming or the shutdown of the Kennedy Center? Maria Bartiromo. Yeah, she's on the Kennedy Center board. She didn't vote no. She didn't vote yes. She didn't vote. But she was present. Very interesting. Embarrassed? Is that it? Hope we won't notice. History won't notice. Yeah, it's not happening. But I love the Washington Post new reporting about the Kennedy Center fundraising. Going terribly because his name is on it. That's not a good thing. That's a radioactive thing. So I want to pick up, and then with that long-winded opening, I want to pick up with Canada and the trade war and what it means and what it signals as Doug Ford and Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford and Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, take turns in French and or English in kicking Donald Trump's ass. And why I think that's been so effective. I'll tie it to some stupid comments by our Treasury Secretary flailing to try to fix the Iran war issue, the bond issue, the financial markets crisis, and why that's not going to work because of one major problem, China. Then I'll turn to Maxwell and Epstein and give you an update on those two, of course, connected issues. Keith Ellison in Minnesota going after fugitives who killed people or shot at people in their state and how that's going, as Texas seems to only be law and order when it involves people they like, people that aren't brown or Hispanic. I don't know. I don't really understand that state that way. I mean, this was a guy, Governor Abbott, who had no problem sending the Texas Rangers into Chicago to go hunt down fugitive Democratic lawmakers who were sitting out the quorum to avoid having those bad congressional maps passed. He had no problem taking migrants, putting them in windbreakers and no coats in the winter and dumping them off on the East Coast at bus stops. I think one died, if not more. And now he's like, well, I don't know if this ICE officer is really a fugitive in the traditional sense. Well, thank God there's a judge, a Texas federal judge, Judge Rodriguez, that by this time tomorrow will have likely kept Castro in jail and or extradited him to Minnesota. We'll talk about that. And I want to uncomplicate what appears on surface to be a complicated mail-in ballot issue so close to the election. We're going to do it all here on the Intersection Podcast, the Webby award-winning Intersection Podcast. So many different ways to support what we do and what I do in particular. You're here on the Midas Touch Network. Free subscribe to Midas Touch. Come over to Legal AF YouTube. where I do and curate all of the videos there. We got about a dozen contributors. ACLU is with us on a regular basis. NAACP is with us. Democracy Forward, Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, Dina Dahl, Melba Pearson, Dave Arenberg, Court of History with Sidney Blumenthal and Sean Wilentz, all under Court Accountability Action, all under one pane of glass to give you one-stop shopping for law and politics over on the Legal AF YouTube channel. And its companion, the sidecar of the motorcycle is the Substack. It's really two motorcycles. It's like two engines on a plane. And the Substack community is overlapping, but there's people that are only on Substack. I do live reports every day, sometimes with guests. I do a Popok pop-up at about 12:45 Eastern time, get about 1,000 to 2,000 people. Tomorrow, I'll do it with Adam Klasfeld if I can, depending upon the hearing, about the Kennedy Center. So come over to Substack, help us stay. I want to get to the top 10 of U.S. politics. I won't rest, and my team won't rest until we reach the top 10 of U.S. politics in Substack. So those are two major ways. This podcast needs a little love. There's a QR code right here. Scan that, download the audio. That helps with the ratings and even if you're a YouTuber, go download the audio for wherever you listen to your audio. Those are all the different ways to do it. I've got a law firm that I created specifically for the intersection Midas Touch and Legal AF community called the Popok Firm. Another QR code, brand new website, same tireless fighters will evaluate your case. It's an injury case, catastrophic injury, things that have turned your life upside down or your loved ones, including death, which of course is a terrible thing, representing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Legal AF and Midas Touch clients. And we'll evaluate your case for you. And if we take the case, great. You won't have to pay us unless we recover. And if we don't take the case, then no harm, no foul. Popok Firm. And then, of course, we've got our sponsors, including for the intersection. And let's take a quick break for them now. If you're 64 or older, you need to understand this. Medicare is so complicated that many people never actually see all of their options. You spend decades paying into the healthcare system. Then suddenly at 65, you're expected to sort through thousands of plans, endless fine print, changing drug coverage, provider networks, all while being flooded with ads and sales pitches. That's why I like Chapter. Chapter is the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan nationwide. My friends over at Midas, they've worked with them for years, and the feedback I got has been stellar. They walk through your doctors, prescriptions, and priorities to help you understand what coverage actually fits your life. And if your current plan is already the best fit, they'll tell you that too. No pressure, no gimmicks, just real guidance in a system that most people find overwhelming. If you're turning 65 or already on Medicare, give Chapter a call. The call is free, and they can review your options in under 20 minutes. If you've ever had a cat, they're basically tiny food critics. My cat Chanel definitely is. She turns her nose up at just about everything. But when I put down Smalls, the bowl is empty in minutes. Even better, since switching Chanel to Smalls, I've noticed more energy, a softer coat, and a whole lot less stink coming from the litter box. That's because Smalls Fresh Cat Food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free, 100% human-grade ingredients you'd find in your fridge, and it's delivered right to your door. Their fresh, gently cooked food is made without preservatives, so more of the nutrients are digestible, which means less junk comes out the other end. After switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements. And if you're worried your cat won't like it, you can try Smalls risk-free. They'll refund you if your cat won't eat their food. So stop serving your little carnivore a bowl of processed shortcuts. For a limited time, because you're an Intersection listener, get 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. That's 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. My ad reads are like little time capsules. Like, where was I when I did that ad? What city was I in? What did my beard look like? Like that. So welcome back to the intersection. Thanks for being so supportive. Got a great audience here tonight. And thank you to our intersection sponsors for all that they do. It's one of the great ways to support our contributions, our channels, what we're doing. Let me turn to Canada, the trade war. Why are we in it? Or as the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch call it, the dumbest trade war ever, revisited. You don't pick a fight with your intertwined, I was going to say Siamese twin, that's really conjoined twin economy that helps fuel your own economy, because there's a fuel line between Canada. It's like a power cord between Canada and the United States. And Canada is on the generator side. I don't think Doug Ford was kidding. There's an old saying, inside of every joke, there's a joke. And him saying, let's turn off the lights of America to remind them how important we are. It's not probably bad. I mean, Ontario's got auto industry, Ford and GM. It's got the electrical grid. We need Canada to power our own economy. And the sooner the guy or the person in the Oval Office recognizes that, the better. It's like when you have a cracked compass or sextant and you can't navigate, and Trump's got a cracked everything, and he doesn't make right decisions, and neither does his trade representative or his commerce secretary or anybody else, because they start off on the wrong foot, usually up their ass or, doing something bad. They're on the wrong foot. We should be negotiating, okay? We should be start from a position of being an ally, an economic ally, and join together, as every president in modern era has tried to do, North America, from Canada down to Mexico, and everything in between, like us. Instead of trying to make examples of them, or trying to emasculate them, or trying to attack their heritage or their language. Who goes after a country's languages? Only the criminally insane, I would suggest. So this has all gone badly. If you wondered what failed trade negotiations look like, this is it. This is it. They miscalculated and underestimated the elbows up approach of Mark Carney and the province premiers like Doug Ford. And just as an aside, Doug Ford is a conservative business person who won really 3 times. Yeah. Unlike what we got. So he's not like a socialist. He's not on the left wing of his country. He's on the right wing of his country. But he's not going to take any bullshit. Pucker up, Trump. And we have some clips, because they're fun, let's play the one of Doug Ford talking about his ample real estate on his backside and Donald Trump.
Just wondering, you sound a little more subdued than you did this morning on the radio when you said Donald Trump could kiss your ass. Did the Prime Minister ask you to tone it down a bit?
No, he didn't. I'm not going to comment, but he wasn't against that. And I have a lot of real estate on my ass, so he has a lot of room to kiss my ass. So well done. I just do. I'm a big dude. What can I say?
This is when he's not wearing a Gordie Howe hockey sweater, which is a great example of what they're doing here. And they're hunkering down, and they're going to win the war. 2/5 of Canadians, 2 out of 5, believe that America is now the enemy and needs to be dealt with as such. You know what it was 3 years ago when Joe Biden was in office? 3%. 2 out of 5 Canadians now on the street will tell you that we're the enemy, or Trump's the enemy, but we by extension are the enemy because of Trump. And that's why they've rallied around Mark Carney. His approval rating is through the roof. His approval rating about how he's dealing with Donald Trump is through the roof. He's going to be elected prime minister for life at this rate, at the rate that Donald Trump is galvanizing support for Mark Carney. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Mark Carney is smarter than Donald Trump in every way, shape, or form. He's an economist. He's a central banker. He's the right person for the job. They have contingency plans. They have domestic bailout packages for the provinces, and they're willing to lose jobs. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't want it to happen. They may lose 50 to 100,000 jobs. They know it, but they think there are just some things that are worth the fight. And they're right. And they're winning. And they have the leverage. And what incentive does Mark Carney have to bail out Donald Trump before the midterms? None. Let Donald Trump be cut down to size once and for all at the midterms, and then let the Canadians, with their strength in hand, negotiate. Here's Mark Carney talking to not only his country, but to the United States of America about their approach to Donald Trump and the trade war.
Why does it feel like today Mark Carney is going to war? Trade war. The tone.
Because we were attacked. You're at war when you get attacked. We got attacked. U.S. put 50%. We waited until the United States decided to actually implement these so-called 338 tariffs. That's fine. We've got the reserves. We got the resilience. We've got the plan. We've got the focus. We will respond. We're going to focus on what we can control. We're going to build.
Yeah, and that is, I was watching Mark, and that is, there are just certain people that are the perfect leaders for the moment, and the moment makes the leader, and they rise and shine. What do they say about pressure? Under pressure, a piece of coal becomes a diamond or a dust. You either shine or melt under the lights, and Canada is kicking our ass. And they should, because they have a lot of advantages that we have seemed to have forgotten about. Raw materials, rare earth minerals, petroleum, hydroelectric, electric, and the rest. And I'll say this again so that you have it as a palm card, talking point with your friends and family and those on social media. We do not have a trade deficit with Canada if you define it properly. Trade is defined as both goods and services. Yeah, we have a slight goods deficit, mainly because what Canada sells us is really, really expensive and valuable, like electricity and power and things related to automotive. And the things we sell them is less, like booze and things like that. And we sell other things as well, too, obviously, in the goods world. And so that accounts for a very small, given the total overall, almost $1 trillion of trade back and forth that used to happen between the two countries. But when you add in the service side, we are exporting much more, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars more in technology, I'm talking about services, consulting services, technology companies, AI companies, cryptocurrency companies, financial services companies, banks, law firms, accounting firms, management consulting firms, you name it. The human AI powered stuff. That's not a tangible thing, including agriculture. And when you add the two together, we don't have a trade imbalance. It is a made up thing, a false narrative for Donald Trump to justify his insane, depraved economic policy that he could not have pulled off. The only way Donald Trump's economic policy, whatever it was supposed to be, he'd have to have 4 terms, complete support by the American people, and everything would have to go absolutely right, like 100 bolts of lightning striking the same spot. It was never going to happen in the hands of these clowns. Impossible. All he did was wreck the good, and create nothing new in its place. Just gaping wounds, gaping holes that make America suffer. When will this administration be put out of our misery? That's merch. We have to get somebody write that down. When will they be put out of our misery? Because it's got to happen soon. And that's what we want, right? We want everybody to get together at the polls and do the voter registration. We'll talk about voting towards the end, why that's so important, and leave it all on the field. Don't wake up the day after the election saying, shit, I could have done 1 or 10 more things that may have improved the odds, right? We need the energy. We need the enthusiasm. We need it. We need the sizzle. There needs to be an enthusiasm gap on election day between MAGA and the Democrats and the independents that are going to send them packing. And, one of the good things that's different than 4 years ago, at a midterm or whatever, is the growth of the Midas Touch and legal AF communities and how dedicated they are. When I'm trying to get new guests to join, like give you my programming list, I got Don Lemon joining me tomorrow. We're working on having James Tallarico or somebody from his organization join us. I'm working on Adam Schiff to be a regular on Legal AF with me. Kristen Clark, the head of the general counsel for the NAACP, used to be the civil rights division head for the Department of Justice. She joins me this week. I just had Keith Ellison. He goes up tomorrow about as the Minnesota Attorney General, et cetera. But the reason I'm able to attract these people or have them want to be on the show is because of you. And because we're no troll zone. Sure, we get a few trolls in there. But by and large, we have such a committed, dedicated, fervent, enthusiastic community. And that will help us. That will fuel us as we move forward towards the midterms. And so when I watch Doug Ford and I watch Mark Carney in French tell Donald Trump to stick it, and then we're not going to give up our Francophone and our French language because Donald Trump failed high school French or whatever the reason is. Part of me, that resistance that's being successful is liberating and exhilarating. And we have versions of it in America as well. But we watch an entire country successfully take on Donald Trump. It gives us a lot of optimism about what is possible. So we thank our Canadian friends for that. And we thank people like Doug Ford and Premier of Ontario and Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, for all that they're doing. They're doing what we can't do for ourselves right now, which is to vote against Donald Trump. We'll catch up and we'll move on from there. Let me move on to things related to the Epstein survivors and Ghislaine Maxwell, because Ghislaine Maxwell had a bad day in court today, which means we should be celebrating. And if Donald Trump's going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, he's going to have to do it after a federal judge named Paul Engelmeyer, who spent about 50 pages reciting all the reasons that Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted and serving 20 years for international child sex trafficking. All of the grooming and all of the predator behavior and all of her responsibility, not just Epstein, for the Epstein sex trafficking ring, outlined in bold letters by Judge Engelmeyer. Now, she already lost her appeal. Some people may be thinking, I thought she lost her appeal already. She did. She had a lawyer at the time, this guy named David Oscar Marcus down in Miami, who got referred to her, I'm pretty darn sure, by his mentor, Alan Dershowitz at Harvard, who was Epstein's lawyer that got him that sweetheart deal. He's the guy, Alan Dershowitz, that when he's not busy being accused of being involved in the sex trafficking ring by Virginia Joffrey before she recanted that story, he is busy attacking victims to support his then client, Jeffrey Epstein. And they, David O. Marcus, and Dershowitz, good friends. That we have photos to prove it. And he ends up representing Maxwell all the way through appeal and trying to get her that pardon. Remember that tremendous pressure in the first year? Pardon her, pardon. And have the freak out in the White House reported by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan about that Situation Room meeting about the Epstein files and about Ghislaine Maxwell, Todd Blanche volunteering to go interview her to try to have a convicted child sex trafficker vouch for Donald Trump's character. How low have you sunk? Can you need the vouching by a convicted child sex trafficker? And so she loses at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. She loses, of course, in trial before a jury. She loses up to the United States Supreme Court. And then David Oscar Marcus sort of gets out, gets off the representation wagon, leaving Ghislaine Maxwell by herself as a jailhouse lawyer scribing and scribbling her own papers. She files a last-ditch thing called the petition for writ of habeas corpus, claiming that there was such unfairness and inequity in her conviction that a federal court should overturn it. And what did she use to support her? All the Epstein files. Talk about the depravity of her accessing the evidence in a cherry-picking, a selective way to try, she thinks, to bolster her getting her conviction overturned. And the judge said, and we have a video up about it now. The judge said, I'll summarize, you know that evidence that you cherry-picked from the Epstein files? Yeah, it actually makes your conviction look more appropriate. Like, it's not exculpatory, it's inculpatory. Well, that's what you, and the other reason he rejected and denied the petition is keeping her right where she is because almost everything that she raised was already raised on appeal, and you can't use and rejected through the Supreme Court. And you can't use a writ of habeas corpus to re-argue your appeal issues that you lost on. You know, oh, there was a juror who had child abuse in his background. It wasn't revealed till later. Well, there was a resolution of that by the judge. Or this was let in, or reporters were taking over for the prosecutors, and like just rambling, bad faith filing stuff. So she lost. An interesting and a little covered fact is that whereas the Department of Justice could have rolled over and said, well, the Department of Justice takes no position about the petition and leaves it to the trusted judgment of the judge to decide. They could have done that, right? Or conspiratorially, collusively enter into a deal with Maxwell to get her out. But because that whole thing backfired for Donald Trump, that whole, I'm thinking about pardoning her, that didn't work politically or morally or ethically or otherwise. His Department of Justice in New York, Southern District of New York, led then by Jay Clayton, U.S. Attorney, who's now the Director of National Intelligence, they filed a very strong opposition paper to Ghislaine Maxwell to keep her in jail under Donald Trump and Todd Blanche. Oh, yeah. So for those that are thinking, now that doesn't mean he's not going to pardon her, but they had an opportunity to but there's so many people watching Ghislaine Maxwell that if the Department of Justice rolled over on that one, it would have been political suicide, I think, even for Donald Trump. And so, but the part that made me laugh out loud is when they implored the judge, the jury rendered its solemn verdict, and it should not be disturbed. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? What about the jury and their solemn verdicts in the cases against Donald Trump, against the Jan 6ers? Those we can disturb. But this one, this is the solemn verdict of a jury that should go undisturbed. It's just, they'll just say, it's situational veracity. They'll just say anything at any given moment, situational ethics that helps them in the moment without regard to what they've done or said at any other time. So Maxwell ain't getting out. And no, the Supreme Court's not going to pop her. And yes, she has a puppy somewhere. They did give her the benefit of a better prison camp. But I think that's done. And if Trump's going to, we're not looking, like the last day of his administration or something else, going to, he's constantly checking the temperature of everybody. Like, oh, can I let her out now? Can I let her out now? No. No, because we're not lowering the temperature, Epstein files with Katie Fang. I'll talk about that next. In the news, in the moment, at the market. I got Danny Bensky, one of the leaders of the Epstein survivors, joining me tomorrow to talk about a lot of these issues on the midweek edition of Legal AF. So Epstein, there's going to be a new filing on Thursday by Todd Blanche because they screwed up in front of the judge when a guy named Andrew Block, who is the only person for the Department of Justice, it's like the Maytag repairman, the only guy sent down to the Department of Justice to argue the case about the Epstein files. You got a judge who's seriously considering appointing, and he should, a special master an officer of the court to oversee the production that already happened and the future production and report back to the judge and take it away from the Department of Justice and to find them in contempt. And they send one Andrew Block down by himself to argue for Todd Blanche. How do you think that went over? Well, I had the lawyer for Katie Fang, Brendan Ballou, on with me, and he said it was the most uncomfortable hearing he's ever been to. He used to be in the Department of Justice. He said there were just these stretches where Andrew Block had no answers. And rather than try to bullshit, he just stared down at the ground in silence, like uncomfortable minutes of silence. But then when he did talk, he fucked it up. The judge said to him let's talk about the handwritten FBI notes of the interview. We call them the 302 reports of the woman who claimed when she was a girl of 13 was sexually abused by Donald Trump. Can we talk about that for a minute? Yes. Okay. You agree with me that the typewritten notes have been produced? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Would you agree with me that the handwritten notes have not been produced? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Has any handwritten FBI notes of any typewritten FBI 302 been produced in the Epstein files? No, I don't believe so. Wrong. Hundreds of them have been produced that don't involve Donald Trump. And why this is so important, it's like the difference between, I just did a hot take about the Kennedy Center. The difference between minutes of a meeting and a transcript of the meeting. Transcript is verbatim, word for word, taken down by a court reporter or AI these days. That's a transcript. Who said what and when and how? What did it look like and sound like if it's recorded or otherwise? Minutes is somebody looking at that and making editorial decisions about what goes in and what ends up on the cutting room floor. Minutes are interesting. Transcripts are really interesting. Same thing with notes. Handwritten notes and scribble and scratch and marginalia and comments on a piece of paper turned upside down and left and right of an interview is it's not a transcript, but it's comprehensive. What that same agent decides to type up in the notes, they'll make decisions. No, I don't remember that part that well, or I don't know what I meant there, or can't read my handwriting, or I think she was confused, or whatever. And you want both, and he lied. So they filed on the Katie Fang side a notice to the court. And they were nice. They didn't say that the guy lied intentionally, although I would have. They said that he made a mistake. And here, Judge, is 100 different times in the Epstein files where handwritten notes exist. They just don't involve Donald Trump's name. Here's an example of why we want them. Here's typewritten notes. Here's handwritten notes, same interview. See the difference? And they also submitted a proposed order about the 200,000 pages of documents that were blacked out that should be produced. And what they said to the judge is, while you're reviewing these documents, now that you know the truth, see if that changes your mind about the Department of Justice's position that the reason they didn't produce the handwritten notes is that it's too difficult to black out victim information, victim identifying information. Really? That's that hard? I don't think so. So that kicked off the whole process. And the judge turned around and said, this is interesting. Department of Justice, on Thursday, you respond and tell me why I shouldn't enter that order. And what about these other FBI handwritten notes? And he's going to get a response of some sort. Remember, this is only about a subset of things that are at the heart of the case. The heart of the case is about 3 million documents about whether a special master is going to be appointed or not. This is just an appetizer, this issue right now with the judge. He's going to lower the boom on them. People that are, he writes very, short and sweet and to the point, right? Wait till you see him write his opinions. These are just his orders to keep the case moving. Judge Sullivan is not happy. Everybody that's in the room watching him or reading anything about him in this case knows that. And so I think Katie Fang's not only doing, of course, journalists a great service and the Epstein survivors a great service, but, our community and everybody by fighting it out, just like Allison Gill is fighting about the FBI training videos about how you get rid of Donald Trump's name from files, and her suit about that. In fact, make a note, team. I'd like to get Allison back with me for an interview. Let's see if we can make that happen this week or early next week. So that is Maxwell Epstein can join together. Let me turn now. Let's see some questions. We got questions? How are we doing? Got some stuff? Do you guys think the Nachos rules 316? There were 315 other Nachos rules. Do you think Democrats will ever look into investigating Clarence Thomas in the future and other judges as well? Somebody else asked, Dania Calico Cloud asked, how long will it take for the congressional process to begin impeaching the orange ghoul and how many months, etc.? It's kind of related. Part of what you are voting for at the midterms is to restore leadership and decency to government and to root out corruption and thievery and this kleptocracy, and to pass laws to help the American people, because this is a do-nothing Congress that has passed like 0 laws. Pass laws that get money and support through our social safety net and otherwise into the hands of people, fix the wrecked economy, help heal what they destroyed or tried to destroy in Obamacare, get children out of poverty, get the elderly, get all of us out of poverty, get the elderly out of poverty. And these are the things that we are sending people to Washington to do, to work for us and to raise resources through taxes and other things, and to allocate it with an appropriate budget that matches as closely as possible our morals and our values and priorities. In addition, as part of corruption reform, that new Congress is going to need to do oversight committee hearings, Senate and House, and impeachment proceedings. Trump impeached apps. I know there's some squeamishness. I've heard like people say that Hakeem Jeffries doesn't want to commit to impeachment. He doesn't want to run on impeaching, because that's not really, you can run on, I'm going to make your life better. You, as a Democrat, as a party, you can run on, here's my 5-point economic plan and how we will fix things. You can run on rooting out corruption in the Republicans and in the current administration. You can do that. But you can't run on, I'm going to impeach everybody first day. That's not quite resonating. But you'll do it because you need to. You have to. History demands it. And so there'll be impeachment against Trump. I think Todd Blanche gets impeached. Kash Patel certainly does. RFK Jr., 100%. Pete Hegseth, oh yes. That's the start. That's the start. And they can conduct those over the course of the first year. I don't know if it's day one, but articles of impeachment are going to be voted on pretty quickly after the new Congress is installed in January of 2027. And that's important because I think that is something people will be voting for. Root out corruption and bring the rogue, out of control administration to heel. And so we're definitely going to be looking at that. I hope I answered a couple of those questions. Let's see what else we want. Can Johnson refuse to swear in and seat any Democrat voted in the next election? Not really. Not really. He can delay it here and there. Like he wouldn't swear in some special election people because they weren't really in a Congress. They were kind of in this other type of Congress you do when you're trying to keep the doors open so the president doesn't make recess appointments. See, have you noticed there's been no recess to allow for Donald Trump to appoint people? Because even MAGA doesn't want to give him that. They're like, no, let's keep the lights on. Somebody show up. We'll talk about a bill. Because they don't want to close. Because if you close, there's recess and recess appointments. So they're always conducting some sort of business. So, he didn't want to sign in. He didn't want to swear in a couple people. But no, he can't not swear in the next Congress. It won't even be up to him. The next Congress will be in control if it goes right to the Democrats. It'll be fill in the blank. Hakeem Jeffries will be deciding whether to swear people in. Could Demon Deacon, Wake Forest, 21. Could Katie Fang have achieved this much simpler by simply filing a motion that the DOJ failed to file an answer to the complaint? Did you watch my video interview with her lawyer? I was like, you're too nice over there. When they missed the deadline to file their answer, and then they missed it again, file a motion for default. File a motion for default. Let them fight out of the hole of default. But no, she couldn't have achieved this much simpler because she got her preliminary injunction earlier, then the answer issue, and then we're here on effectively contempt. So no, the order of operation is right. I don't begrudge. I try not to Monday morning. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback or armchair quarterback it, but they're in the trenches, and we do appreciate them. Let me turn to Minnesota extradition issue, and then I'll end it with the SCOTUS and mail-in ballots. Minnesota and Hennepin County's District Attorney Mary Moriarty and the Attorney General Keith Ellison are continuing to investigate and bring to justice those people who were out of control and abused the rule of law and maimed, injured, murdered, or worse American citizens and others on the streets of Minnesota. The Department of Justice has abdicated its responsibility. Hours after Renee Good and Alex Preddy were murdered, you had Harmy Dillon and Pam Bondi saying, nothing to see here. We're not opening an investigation. We don't think anything went wrong. Really? How do you know that if you don't investigate? Thankfully, Minnesota's investigating under state law. They're not getting a lot of cooperation. Tune in tomorrow at about 9:30 Eastern Time a.m. for my interview with Keith Ellison. And they are not ready to announce anything, but they are continuing to investigate and develop their own evidence. They've gotten some cooperation from the Department of Justice, but not complete cooperation. But when it came to Christian Castro, he's the guy along with his partner who, having shot at a guy, a Venezuelan citizen, running away from a traffic stop into a door with a family behind the other side of the door and firing through the door, hitting Castro in the leg and almost murdering a child on the other side. To cover up for it, Castro and his partner claimed that the guy who ran away was attacking them with brooms and shovels until a video came out which showed no broom or shovel and the firing of the weapon through the door. And then ICE did, and Department of Homeland Security did something very interesting. They had to admit that Castro was a liar and had lied under oath. They dismissed the indictments against the guy that was shot. Like they wheeled him in a wheelchair. And then you would think, and the next step is they announced an indictment of the guy. Oh, no, they left it to Minnesota to indict him on 4 felony counts and a misdemeanor count. And he became a fugitive. He became a fugitive because he left Minnesota. Now, he left Minnesota because he got called back to Texas by Homeland Security, but who cares? He wasn't in Minnesota when the arrest warrant came out, and he was in another place. That's what's called fugitive status, and extradition happens. And among the 50 states, there's no debate. We have the same legal system. You got to send back the person. Every day, governors sign extradition orders. As we're speaking, Texas is extraditing people to other places, including Minnesota. And Minnesota is extraditing to Texas and other places without fanfare. But when it came to this guy, oh no. First, Governor Abbott said, I'll sign the order if the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, admits to fraud. I'm like, what does this have to do with this? What are we doing? We're doing political point scoring instead of getting a person to stand for justice and brought back to answer for his crimes. I just don't understand. So when you have a political hack as your governor in a state, then the other governor has to send his attorney general to that state to file a petition for mandamus to compel the federal officer to do his job. And that's what's in front of Judge Rodriguez. They had a hearing today. about whether they were going to release Castro because he was on a 90-day hold as a fugitive while he sorted it out. But it's up on Thursday. It's up on Thursday. So the judge has to decide by like tomorrow whether he's going to sign the extradition order himself and extradite him back to Minnesota. I mean, he's innocent until proven guilty, but let's get him out of Texas and back to the state where the crime was committed. So kudos to Keith Ellison, and thank you to Mary Moriarty, the Hennepin County attorney, for going after and investigating these things. Very interesting thing. I told Keith during my interview, I'm always smarter coming off the interview than when I joined it. And I learned, I like, one of the things I like about this job is I learned so much, even me, preparing for my commentary or shows like this. And I learned something that I didn't know before, which is that in Minnesota, they don't use a grand jury to indict for crimes other than murder in the first degree. So the only thing that grand juries are used for in Minnesota is murder in the first degree. Really, everything else is indicted, if you will, by criminal complaint sworn out by the prosecutors. Very interesting, right? So there's no grand jury process. There must be a historical reason. I'll have to do some research on that. So he doesn't, the reason I bring it up is because the Department of Justice, in getting bad press about Castro and the extradition back to Minnesota, let it leak out that they're considering bringing charges against him. Well, if there's a sitting grand jury, you just violated Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. You revealed this. You're not supposed to talk about the secret grand jury. And if it's not, then it's not true either. So which law did you violate? In any event, nobody believes him anyway. So let Minnesota do its job. We appreciate you. Thank you for being there. Programming note, I'm still planning, I think, the day after Labor Day to go to Detroit in order to be with the Democratic Attorneys General at their conference and to interview them for Legal AF and the Midas Touch Network. Lastly, let me do very quickly, but hopefully succinct enough that everybody follows it. Because there's so many orders out there and so many cases involving voter data and mail-in balloting. I want to sort this out as of today. There are 2 orders that have come out in the last 48 hours or so. One from Judge Talwani, Massachusetts District Court Judge. One from the United States Supreme Court. Both about mail-in ballots, but brought by different groups. The League of Women Voters of Massachusetts brings the case in Massachusetts, and the states, led by California and other states, bring the one to the United States Supreme Court. They challenge the executive order issued by Donald Trump in which he's tried to empower, Homeland Security, you make a database, and the Attorney General, and you go investigate voter fraud. And you, Post Office, you don't deliver mail-in ballots unless they're on a list. And the states ran into court and got a block, which ended up being appealed to the United States Supreme Court. But at the same time, the League of Women Voters got out of Judge Talwani a nationwide injunction. Yes, a nationwide injunction to block the post office and all the other aspects of it from meddling in mail-in balloting. That block, that injunction is still in place, has not been reversed on appeal at any level, and is nationwide. So as of right now, because of Judge Talwani's decision, the post office is not able to implement the executive order of the president to fuck with mail-in balloting. In the Supreme Court, the issue is whether the states had been injured while the post office had not yet created its rule to implement the executive order. They hadn't gotten around to it yet. That was on the record up to that moment. And they said 6-3, you can guess who the 6 were, that you states haven't been injured yet because the post office has not issued its rule yet. And therefore, we're going to block the injunction and we're going to let you see if you will be injured in the future, and then you can come back. The very next day, the post office promulgated its rule. Bing. So even this Supreme Court should understand that the states are on their way back, round trip, a round trip that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in her dissent called a Kafkaesque maze of a creation by this court's inconsistent lawmaking. Like, do it now. You know what's about to happen. Oh, no, hasn't happened yet. States haven't been injured yet. We'll make the ruling. You know, we'll see in time whether we need, that's what they wrote, whether we need to make the ruling. But it all doesn't matter at the moment because of Judge Talwani's nationwide injunction to block it. And there's briefing going on right now, which will round out this week, about the new rule that the post office just executed or entered or published. And it's going to be Judge Talwani that's going to block the regulation. Then they'll take an appeal, the Trump side, from Talwani to the Supreme Court. Then we'll get to the merits. Right now, it's not on the merits. So everyone, I know I saw the reporting. It's like, in a blow to mail-in balloting, the United States Supreme Court has blocked, or they didn't block. They blocked because they dismissed the appeal, and therefore the injunction went with it, because they found at that moment that the states were not injured enough to be plaintiffs in the case, reserving judgment if they come right back after the rule is created. Ta-da. I don't know. That's my way of explaining it. Keep your eye on Talwani. I certainly will. I'm trying to get the ACLU on with me about that case. And then you have, finally, the United States Supreme Court that either in the state case brought by the states or the Women's League of Voters of Massachusetts case up in Massachusetts are going to be making this decision. And tick-tock, everybody, it's like 80 days to the midterms. You know, we are getting dangerously close to what the Supreme Court normally declares under the Purcell Doctrine to be too close to make a difference right now. Interesting issues we would normally rule, but we're way too close to an election. But they've thrown the Purcell Doctrine out the window. They've intervened when people have already voted in Alabama and other places. They had no problem with saying, nope, we're going to change the rules, change the maps, change the votes. They only use the Purcell Doctrine when it's convenient to them, and it sort of makes their point. So, listen, look what we covered today. This, like, what kind of show is this? Got the Kennedy Center, Canada trade war. I threw in a little bit about Iran too. Maxwell and Epstein and developments in those cases. Minnesota's extradition efforts about the rogue ICE agent, and the United States Supreme Court and mail-in balloting. That is a well-balanced meal. That is a complete show, which we couldn't do without you. Your generosity is overwhelming, and we appreciate it. The ways to support us, because some people are like, we love the content. How can we vote for the content and vote for you? It's easy. You use the QR code up here and download the Intersection and keep us at the top of the charts and top rated as a podcast. Even if you're a YouTube watcher, help us out on the audios. That's one. 2, subscribe here on the Midas Touch Network, but come over to the Legal AF YouTube channel. Yes, boom. We're at 1,210,000 subscribers. We will hit 1.3 million before this summer is over with your help. 10 new videos a day, 11 new videos a day. I do a lot of them myself, but we have some great contributors. ACLU is going to be on with me this week. The NAACP is going to be on with me this week. The another attorney general is going to be on with me this week. We're trying to get Senator Adam Schiff squared away for him to appear with me for the first time. He's on the Judiciary Committee. He'll be taking on Kash Patel soon. Don Lemon will be on with me this week. We're working on trying to get James Tallarico on with me, the Senate candidate in Texas. You know, all because of you. I'm just your ambassador. Let's be frank. And then we've got the Substack. I sound like my 2-year-old daughter there for a minute. Substack, which is a fantastic community that runs parallel to our Legal AF YouTube channel. I do live reporting there. We'll do some tomorrow, coming off of the hearing about the Kennedy Center with Adam Klasfeld, and become a subscriber and help us stay on the air. I mean, that's one of the other ways to do it. Then, of course, we've got the Popok firm dedicated to your legal needs, catastrophic injury, illness, If you've been injured by the negligence of others, come to the Popok firm, use the QR code, brand new website, same tireless fighters. We'll evaluate your case for you. And we, with live people, not AI, and we will tell you if you have a case. And if we do, and we sign you up, then you will not pay us unless we recover for you over on the Popok firm. And shout out to our amazing sponsors who are sponsoring Midas and The Intersection as well. Thank you for being here. It was fun answering your questions. That's one of the great parts about doing it live. I'll see you next Tuesday, tomorrow night here on the Wednesday night edition of Legal AF. The podcast. We'll have Danny Bensky, Epstein survivor, joining us. And then Saturday, of course, I'm back on with Ben Meiselas, my co-founder of all things Legal AF. Until then, I'm Michael Popok. Shout out to the Midas Mighty, the Legal AFers, and of course, the Intersectionists. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.